Hello guys, welcome back to this channel. Today we'll be ranking all 18 Legends of Tomorrow Season 2 episodes. Not much else to say, but we can get really right into it. Go check out my Arrowverse playlist as well as my Legends of Tomorrow Season 2 review. Without further ado, let's get started. Coming in at number 18, we have Episode 2, Freak Show. This episode is just kind of dull. I don't really like the whole circus plot line. It just doesn't work for me. I think it could work in a different season, but this and episode 11 are just two very filler episodes. And overall, this one, I just think you can kind of skip it if you're I'd say there are some seasons where I feel like there's episodes you can skip because they're just all filler. This is one of those episodes. It doesn't contribute much to the season. The only thing it really does is affirm that Nate is really annoying, at least in this episode. Especially in this episode. He's annoying throughout the whole beginning of the season, I would say. In that their relationship between him and Maya, there's some fun stuff with Marty and Jax. But other than that, really not much else that there is to enjoy here. Coming in at number 17, we have Episode 1 of Rubicon. So far, this is my least favorite season premiere on Legends. One of my least favorite in the Arrowverse. It doesn't really do anything. My biggest problem with it is the way it kind of ended. It continued from the cliffhanger from Season 2. To be honest, overall, the cliffhanger, or the way it kind of followed up throughout the whole season, really didn't bother me. Just this episode, really, because I like how it kind of set up the time bureaucracy or time bureau and some other stuff. But the way some of the legends are acting as characters, specifically Sarah and Nate, it just doesn't work. And I like some of the things, I like seeing Julius Caesar. I thought he was a good villain throughout this episode. But a lot of this episode is just kind of dull. Another one that I'm just not a huge fan of. These two are the only ones I don't really like. Everything else from here on out, or from 16 and on, is at least good. I don't even think this episode's that bad. I just think it's okay. Coming in at number 16, we have Episode 16, I, Ava. Overall, my biggest problem with this episode, I just really do not like the twist reveal involving her being a clone. I just don't like that at all. I do kind of like the other part of it with Damien Dark and Kawaza. And the whole thing with Amaya becoming the captain. But the twist reveal is really the whole point of this episode. It doesn't work. And it doesn't do too much for the storyline, except to give up the water totem and Kawaza died, I think, in this episode. That might have been the next episode, I'm not sure. I like Damien Dark's turn to good in this episode. That's definitely the best part of this episode. And he's, as normal, he's a fun character throughout this episode. And this is actually a really fun episode overall. But it's not really a good episode. Coming in at number 15, this is where we actually start to get into pretty good episodes. I think we have Helen Hunt. Helen Hunt, my biggest problem with this one, it's just another kind of filler one. I do like the whole Helen of Troy storyline as a whole, but overall, this entire episode just doesn't quite work for me. There are a couple things I do like. I do kind of like the whole Marty thing throughout the episode, in his kind of relationship, or he likes his character, and I like some of the Damien Dark side of things. But other than that, this episode doesn't have too much to offer. But I do think it's a pretty good episode. It's an enjoyable one. Overall, this still works in the season, and it's a kind of fun episode, but another one that's kind of filler. Coming in at number 14, we have Episode 4, Phone Home. My biggest problem with this episode, I just don't like the whole thing when they keep bringing back the Dominators. They brought them back twice since Invasion, once in Supergirl, and then another time in this season. I just do not think it works. Every time they try to do it, it just doesn't work. But I do like the novelty of seeing a younger Ray Palmer. I think that's the fun of this episode overall. And other things I really enjoy about it, it's just an entertaining episode. I kind of enjoy seeing the view from a kid and see little Ray. I think whenever you kind of see these younger versions of the Legends, it's always kind of fun. I think it does work better in that episode of Season 1, but with the little Sarah and little Mick, and I think there's I think Little Ray might be in it. I'm not sure. But overall, I do think this is a fun little episode. But I'm just tired of them overusing this whole plotline involving the Dominators. So that's the reason why it's not higher. Coming in at number 13, we have episode 15, Necromancing the Snow. That's debating between those two. They're both hard to place. But the reason why I put this one higher, it just does more it does more to advance the story as the season goes on. My biggest problem throughout this episode as a whole, just the whole plotline involving Sarah, it's just kind of weird. It doesn't quite work. Especially, this episode should have been a bit earlier in the season. I don't know, they placed it all the way to like the fourth to last episode of the season. This as well as episode 6, maybe not episode 16, but this should have been placed earlier in the season. Maybe after like Daddy Darkest. Or maybe this one should have been right after. Oh wait, no, it is. Never mind. Overall, my biggest problem with this one is just the whole, I just mentioned it. The storyline with Sarah and the Death Totem. I think the main point of this episode is just so we can see Sarah use the Death Totem, that she's worthy for it, I guess. But overall, there's not much to this episode. I like some of the Damien Dark and Nora Dark stuff. This is kind of where you start to see Damien Dark become good, and I kind of like that side of things, but overall, what they're starting to do with Nora Dark, it just doesn't quite work, especially with what, like, episode 13 kind of set up. But it's still a pretty enjoyable episode. Coming in at number 12, we have episode 3, Zari. I think this is a great little start to the character as a whole. I do enjoy the character of Zari throughout the season, and I hope she does a bit more in the next couple seasons, or 3 seasons, including season 6. But overall, my biggest problem with this episode, just the way it kind of starts some things. Like, I didn't care for the Kawaza character throughout most of the season, really. Until really, like, I didn't really like her until, like, episode 16 or 17, whenever she died. Because I didn't think she was interesting at all throughout this part of the season. But I mean, she works as kind of an assassin, but you don't really know much about her until much later. Then she gets an interesting character, but for here, I don't really like her that much as a character. But it's still kind of fun seeing, like, 2040s and what, wherever their central city has kind of turned into. It's kind of cool, but not much to this episode. But I do like the way it introduces us to the Zari character. And this is where the season starts to kind of get going. Number 11, we have episode 14, Amazing Grace. I feel like this episode gets a decent amount of hate. I don't see any of the hate. I actually really enjoy this episode. Seeing, like, Elvis Presley kind of becoming who he is, or what the problems could have been with this anachronism is kind of cool. I actually just like the story as a whole throughout this episode. My one problem with it, the way as a whole the Death Totem kind of works throughout the whole season, especially in episodes 14 and 15. Really, it's really just those 2 episodes. It's kind of like a weird way that it works. I feel like they don't do much to develop what the Death Totem actually does. I mean, it involves death, of course, but overall, I do think this is a pretty cool episode. And I do really enjoy it, but I just don't think, the reason why it's not higher is just because there's just not much to it, other than the fact that they try to have Elvis Presley play the guitar, play some great music and become the guy who he is and establish rock. I do I've noticed that with some of these anachronisms, like you could see it's like that episode of season 2 involving Indiana Jones and Star Wars, like if they didn't get created, what could happen? It's interesting to think that that stuff, like maybe what would happen if they weren't created. It's interesting to think about that. This is a good example of that. Kicking out the top 10, we have episode 8, Crisis on Earth X Part 4. Easily my least favorite part of Crisis on Earth X. I just don't like it as much as some of the other parts. I really enjoyed both parts 1, 2, and 3. And then this episode, I think it's just not as good. Some of the way it ends it, especially the way they dispense of Reverse Flash, doesn't quite work. I do enjoy some of the action, but it's not the best. I think every single battle besides this one, I think had been better, mostly, especially the great action sequence in episode 2 and 1, parts 1 and 2 of this crossover. And overall, some of the things I do love about it, I love Marty's death part. I thought that was a pretty emotional death for the character. And other than that, there's not really much to it. And I do really enjoy this episode, but overall, I do think it's my least favorite of the annual crossover event episodes, excluding Heroes Join Forces, because I think both of those are worse than this. I think it's my third or fourth least favorite. It's my fourth least favorite crossover episode right now. And of the great good crossovers, I think it's still for my least favorite episode from those. But it's still great. It's still enjoyable because it's a crossover episode, and so I'm always gonna like it. Coming in at number 9, we have episode 12, Curse of the Earth Totem. I do actually really enjoy them going back to the 1700s and involving pirate stuff, which I'm a huge fan of the movie Pirates of the Caribbean, so it's kind of nice to kind of see that. My one problem with it, it's just like, I just don't think it's as exciting as some of the other episodes, and I feel like there's a bit too much going on with the Bermuda Triangle plot line, the whole dark plot line, and the other pirates. There's the part with Blackbeard. There's a lot going on in this episode, and the way it ends is actually really interesting with them capturing Ray, and then you see a lot of stuff happen, and I do really enjoy this episode, but it's not quite as good as some of the others. Coming in at number 8, we have episode 7 here, not 7, episode 11, Here We Go Again. Overall, I really enjoy this episode. The whole plotline involving Zari starting to become more of a team member of the Legends. I really enjoy that. My one problem, it came at kind of an interesting point in time. This should have come out maybe like a bit earlier in the season. I'd say between like episodes, maybe like 7 and 8. Like, this would have been a good episode right before the mid-season finale. And then push Welcome to the Jungle maybe to episode 11. I think that would have been, swap those two, 7 and 11. I mean, I guess it works. Overall, I really still do enjoy this episode. But, I mean, it's just kind of filler. I mentioned this. There's 2 main filler episodes, Freak Show and Here I Go Again. Also, there's some other ones like Hell Troy, Necromancing the Snow, and this one's not too filler, but I feel like episode Phone Home's kind of filler too. But this episode, I just think it's kind of filler. But other than that, if you just take it as an episode as a whole, not an episode of the season, it does work. Coming in at number 7, we have episode 7, Welcome to the Jungle. I really enjoy this episode. I love seeing Grodd again. Some of the action's great. I love the kind of Predator style of this episode, because I'm a huge fan of the movie Predator. So it's nice to see that in the Legends of Tomorrow episode. My problem with it, I feel like they could have done a bit more with like the Dick Rory character and some of the other characters and the mercenaries, I guess. I don't know if they're mercenaries or not. I kind of like how it takes place in Vietnam. That's kind of cool, giving it an interesting setting. But the way it kind of mixes the Predator stuff with it and the actual Grodd and Legends of Tomorrow, it doesn't quite work. So it makes for kind of a weird episode. But if you take that out of it, I still really enjoy this episode. Coming in number 6, we have episode 9, Bebo, the God of War. This is I think the better of the 2 mid-season finales that we've seen so far. This is where we get into the great episodes. I really see like how like dumb the Vikings are and thinking Bebo's a god. I find that really funny, and the way they kind of take Bebo's, I guess, commands, or saying when he says Bebo hungry, I think it's kind of funny. I do really enjoy this episode. I like seeing young Marty again. I kind of always enjoy the 3 times we've seen him. I really enjoy that. And overall, this is a really fun episode, fun mid-season finale. I love the cliffhanger involving Mollis, Constantine, and Sarah. And that makes for a great mid-season finale. My one problem, when you really think about it, for most mid-season finales I've noticed, there's always so much going on, and like there's so much bending for what's like so much like time bending, not time bending, but like so much unfolds. This episode, really, most of the stuff that unfolds comes a bit later throughout the season, like episode really 10 to 16, I think there's like a lot more unfolding. Here, there's really not much of that, except for the fact that we get introduced to introduced to Mollis, or his actual kind of threat sort of thing. Because we did see him in episode 5. We didn't really know much about it, or what that thing was, until this episode, and I do think it makes for a pretty cool cliffhanger. Kicking off at the top 5, we have episode 5, Return of the Mac. I really like this episode, seeing Damien Dark return to form, and the whole thing with the Time Bureau agents trying to fight him, and this is where you really get to see how powerful Damien Dark is. And then, I feel like this is really, a good match of his powers. You don't really get to see his powers much throughout Season 2, mostly because of Reverse Flash. It's kind of the commanding force with the Elysian of Doom. And then Season 4, you could just tell he's kind of overpowered. But then when you get to this season, you can kind of see this is how powerful he is. and it works. I don't really have any problems with this episode, except I feel like the way they kind of set up Marty's. They feel like they were trying to set up something with Marty's great grandpa. They didn't do anything with that. But but other than that, no problems. I thought this was a great episode. Coming in number 4, we have The Good, the Bad, and the Cuddly, the season finale. My biggest problem with this one, I just don't think it's a great season finale. I think it's a great episode, but not a great season finale. The way it kind of just concludes the season, it just rushes through what it's trying to do. And I feel like this should have been split into 2 episodes. Where like the first episode you kind of see Mollis trying to form a plan on actually what he's trying to do. And then you see the legends try to fight him. This episode you see this episode you see the legends create a plan to actually take him down, and then you have all the resolutions. I think that would have made for a great maybe like a 2-parter. I would say that would have worked. But my problem with this episode, just the way it just kind of concludes the story, is very flimsy. Like you could tell I bet they had to find a way, because I bet Mollis was a very expensive to do with CGI. They should have had him appear in maybe a different episode. And then, like, maybe in, like, episode 9, when, like, you see him appear, like, when Sarah's in Mollis's mind, or Dark's mind, I guess. I thought that would have been great. But overall, I just think I feel like they could have done more to end the season. But it does still really works. And I still think it's a fun season finale. Coming in at number 3, we have episode 13, No Country for Old Dads. This is a great follow-up to episode 12, where Maya takes the Earth Totem. Damien Dark has both the Fire Totem and the Spirit Totem, or Amaya's Totem, I guess. And I think it really works. I love seeing the 60s and Damien Dark's younger self. That's actually really fun. I mean, I haven't seen the movie No Country for an Old Man, but I hope it's a good movie. And he does kind of look like Javier Bardem from really anything. And overall, I really enjoyed this episode. I don't think it's quite as good as Legion of Doom from Season 2, Episode 10. Or Season 2, Episode 10, Legion of Doom. I don't think it's quite as good as that one. They're kind of similar. Because I feel like this one, you kind of see the team kind of bantering pretty hilariously, and them trying to accomplish something. Kind of the same thing. The only difference is that you see Dark from the 60s, and you get a few different stuff from that. I think the one from season 2 is a bit better, but this is still a great episode. Really worked for me. This one's kind of underrated. I don't see this episode getting much love at all, but I really enjoy it, and I thought it was a great episode for the season. Kicking up the top 2, we have episode 17, guest starring John Noble. This is probably my favorite penultimate episode in the entire Arrowverse. This or Darkness at the Edge of Town. One of those two, they're both great. My one problem with this episode, I wish we saw more of Mollis, and the whole Damien Dark stuff doesn't quite work for me. But other than that, I think this is a great episode. I like seeing that John Noble, actually. I thought that was kind of fun. But I feel like this season kind of ended in a 2 and a 1.5. This is my one problem is, as a penultimate episode, it kind of feels weird, because I feel like most seasons, like Arrow season 1, Flash season 1, or Flash season 1, not really, but Arrow, some end in like another 2 or 3 episode arc, which I think this one needed, or a 3 episode conclusion to end the season, and this could have been the first of the 3, I guess. I mean, some other seasons have I think I really like when they do like a 3 episode conclusion, because that kind of works for me. This season needed that instead of like a 1.5, which that's what this episode kind of felt like. So as a penultimate episode, it's not that good, but as an episode, I think it's fantastic. And that's the only reason why it's not number 1. Coming in at number 1, we have episode 10, Daddy Darkest. I love the whole meta possessed horror thing. I really like that part of it. My one problem with it, it's a little weird when you mesh it in with the time travel stuff, but I do think this is a really fun episode with some great action. You see Sarah Lance and some stuff. The whole seeing Nora Dark as a child really works for me. And I think this is a really fun episode overall. Really nice to see Constantine. I hope they don't make him into like the main character in season 4, which I feel like I'm worried that's what they're gonna do. I don't know if that's what they do, but I don't know. Don't spoil it for me. I hope, just don't. But overall, this is a really not good episode. I don't really have like any problems with this episode, except for maybe the part with like the whole time traveling thing. It doesn't quite work in this episode. But I think this episode, I really like how it's the way it follows up from episode 9, and it really works as a mid-season premiere. This kind of should have been the mid-season finale, I guess, but it doesn't really matter. But that kind of concludes this ranking. So thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and comment down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Adios.